My name is Diamond, a 35-year-old single father to my 7-year-old son, Mason. My world shattered when Mason was rushed to ICU, fighting for his life. During his most critical hours, my mother called, demanding I help prepare for my sister Rachel's birthday. When I refused, she threatened to cut me off financially. I hung up and blocked her number. The next day, Mason opened his eyes and whispered something that froze my blood. "Dad, Grandma caused it." Before I dive into this heartbreaking story, please share in the comments where you are watching from, and if you have ever had to set boundaries with family to protect someone you love. Hit like and subscribe if you believe that protecting your children should always come first. Life as a software engineer in Seattle provided a comfortable living for Mason and me, but it was never my career that defined me. It was being a father. 3 years ago, my wife Lisa died in a car accident on a rainy Tuesday evening. She was coming home from her art class when a drunk driver crossed the median. Just like that, I became both mother and father to our 4-year-old son. My relationship with my mother, Patricia, had always been strained. At 65, she was a controlling figure in our family dynamics, constantly seeking to manipulate situations to her liking. She had a way of making every conversation about her needs, her opinions, her view of how the world should operate. Even as a child, I sensed something was off about the way she parented, but I lacked the vocabulary to name it. Patricia never accepted Lisa from the moment I introduced them. "She is not good enough for you," she said the night I announced our engagement. "You could do so much better with someone from a proper family." Lisa came from humble beginnings, the daughter of immigrants who worked in restaurants. My mother, with her country club memberships and social climbing aspirations, considered this beneath us. Despite my mother's disapproval, Lisa and I built a beautiful life together. We learned to maintain careful boundaries with Patricia, limiting our interactions to holiday gatherings and occasional Sunday dinners. Lisa was gracious despite my mother's thinly veiled insults and backhanded compliments. My sister Rachel, now 30, had always been the golden child. From childhood piano recitals to her college graduation, my mother showered her with affection and praise that I never received. Rachel grew up believing she was entitled to special treatment, and my mother reinforced this belief at every opportunity. When Lisa died, something shifted in my mother's behavior. Her attempts to control my life intensified, particularly regarding Mason. She began showing up unannounced at our home, criticizing everything from the food in our refrigerator to the toys in Mason's room. "This place is a mess," she would say, surveying our living room with disapproving eyes. "The boy needs a woman's touch. He should come live with me." "We are doing fine, Mom," I would respond, trying to keep my voice level for Mason's sake. "Are you, though? Look at you. You look exhausted. You work too much. Mason needs stability, routine. I could give him that." These conversations became a weekly occurrence. Patricia would find fault with my parenting at every turn. If Mason had a scraped knee, I was negligent. If he had a cold, I wasn't dressing him warmly enough. If he struggled with homework, I wasn't providing enough structure. The conflict between us extended to parenting philosophies. Patricia believed in strict discipline, limited screen time, and structured activities. I encouraged Mason's creativity, allowed him to explore his interests, and valued emotional intelligence over rigid rules. My mother saw this as weakness. "You are raising him to be soft," she would say. "Boys need discipline." Before the incident that changed everything, Mason and I had established a good rhythm to our lives. I arranged my work schedule to be home when he finished school. We had dinner together every night, and I read to him before bed, continuing a tradition Lisa had started. On weekends, we explored hiking trails, visited museums, or just stayed home building elaborate Lego creations. Mason was thriving academically, making friends easily, and slowly healing from the loss of his mother. He kept her photo by his bed, and sometimes asked questions about her that broke my heart and healed it simultaneously. "Did Mom like blueberry pancakes too?" he would ask on Sunday mornings. She loved them. She used to add vanilla to the batter, just like we do. These moments kept Lisa present in our lives, a gentle ghost that united rather than haunted us. But in the weeks leading up to Mason's hospitalization, I noticed concerning changes in his behavior. After spending time with my mother, which I reluctantly allowed monthly, he became withdrawn and anxious. He would cling to me when it was time to visit her, something that had never happened before. "I do not want to go to Grandma's," he said the weekend before everything fell apart. "Why not, buddy? You usually have fun there." He shrugged, unable or unwilling to articulate his feelings. "I just want to stay with you." I should have listened to his reluctance. I should have trusted that silent communication. But I believed maintaining family connections was important for him, especially since he had already lost his mother. So I encouraged him to go, promising to pick him up early. It was a decision I would come to regret more deeply than anything in my life. The weekend at Patricia's house, just 7 days before Mason ended up in the ICU, seemed unremarkable at first. My mother insisted we come for Sunday lunch, calling 3 times that week to remind me. "Mason needs a home-cooked meal," she said, implying that my cooking was somehow inadequate. When we arrived at her Tudor-style home in the affluent neighborhood where I grew up, she had prepared an elaborate spread. There were roasted vegetables, a perfectly browned chicken, homemade rolls, and several side dishes I did not recognize. "I made all of Mason's favorites," she announced, though many of the dishes were things I had never seen my son eat. Throughout the meal, Patricia insisted on serving Mason herself, piling his plate high with second helpings despite my presence. "Growing boys need proper nutrition," she said pointedly, when I mentioned he had already eaten enough. "Mason can tell us if he is full, Mom," I replied. "Nonsense. Children do not know what they need." She placed another scoop of an unusual-looking casserole on his plate. "This is my special recipe. It has all sorts of good things for a growing boy." Mason looked at me uncertainly, but took a few bites to be polite. Patricia watched him intently as he ate, a strange satisfaction in her eyes that I should have recognized as a warning sign. On the drive home, Mason was unusually quiet, staring out the window instead of chatting about his day as he typically did. "Did you have a good time at Grandma's?" I asked. "It was okay," he replied without enthusiasm. "Did something happen that upset you?" He shook his head, but would not meet my eyes. "My tummy feels funny." I assumed it was from overeating. Patricia had practically force-fed him after all. "We will take it easy tonight. Maybe just some toast for dinner if you are not feeling well." The next morning, Mason complained of stomach pains again. Nothing severe, just a persistent discomfort that made him quieter than usual. I gave him some children's antacid and sent him to school, thinking it was just mild indigestion. When I picked him up that afternoon, his teacher mentioned he had visited the nurse complaining of stomach pain. He did not have a fever, she assured me, but he did not eat much lunch. That evening, I called my mother, wondering if something in her cooking might have disagreed with him. "What exactly did you put in that casserole?" I asked after explaining Mason's symptoms. "Just vegetables and herbs," she replied defensively. "Nothing a normal child would not eat. You coddle him too much, Diamond. When you were his age, I never catered to every little complaint." "He is not complaining, Mom. He is genuinely uncomfortable." "Well, it has nothing to do with my cooking. Perhaps if you fed him properly at home, his stomach would not be so sensitive." I ended the call feeling frustrated but still not suspicious. Patricia had always been critical of my parenting, but the idea that she would deliberately harm Mason was unthinkable at that point. By Wednesday, Mason's condition had deteriorated. He woke up vomiting and developed a fever of 102 degrees. I called in sick to work and took him to our family doctor. "It looks like a nasty case of flu," Dr. Williams said after examining him. "There is a lot going around right now. Keep him hydrated, continue with fever reducers, and call if his symptoms worsen." I followed the doctor's instructions diligently, giving Mason small sips of electrolyte solution and monitoring his temperature. By evening, he seemed slightly better, even eating a few bites of toast. "I think the medicine is working, buddy," I told him, relieved to see some improvement. But at midnight, everything changed. I woke to the sound of Mason crying. When I rushed to his room, he was curled in a ball, clutching his stomach. "It hurts, Dad," he sobbed. "It really, really hurts." His skin was burning hot to the touch, and when I took his temperature, it had spiked to 104 degrees. Even more alarming, he seemed confused, unable to focus on my face. "We are going to the hospital," I said, wrapping him in a blanket and carrying him to the car. At the emergency room, Mason's condition rapidly worsened. He became lethargic, his responses sluggish. The emergency room doctor ordered blood tests and an IV for fluids, concerned about severe dehydration. When the results came back, the doctor's expression changed from concerned to alarmed. "There are some unusual markers in his blood work," she explained. "His liver enzymes are elevated, and there are signs of toxicity that do not align with a viral infection. We need to transfer him to intensive care immediately for more specialized treatment." As they prepared Mason for transfer, I stood frozen, watching my small son connected to machines that dwarfed his body. The doctor placed a hand on my shoulder. "Mr. Evans, I need to ask you something important. Has Mason ingested anything unusual? Any medications, household chemicals, or plants?" "No," I replied immediately. "Nothing I know of. Could he have accessed anything at school or elsewhere? Perhaps at a relative's home?" And that was when the first inkling of suspicion entered my mind. The strange casserole at my mother's house. Mason's immediate stomach issues afterward. Her defensiveness when I called. "He was at his grandmother's house on Sunday," I said slowly. "She prepared some dishes I did not recognize." The doctor nodded. "We will run toxicology screens. In the meantime, we need to get him stabilized." As they wheeled Mason toward the ICU, his small hand slipped from mine, and I felt a cold fear unlike anything I had experienced since the police officer had appeared at my door to tell me about Lisa's accident. The pediatric intensive care unit was a world of beeping monitors, hushed voices, and the constant hum of life-saving machinery. Mason lay unconscious in a bed that seemed to swallow his small frame, intubated and connected to a ventilator that breathed for him. IV lines delivered medications and fluids. A cardiac monitor tracked his heart rate with steady, artificial precision. Dr. Eleanor Chen, the pediatric critical care specialist, explained Mason's condition with gentle frankness. "Your son is experiencing symptoms consistent with severe poisoning, but we have not yet identified the specific toxin. His liver and kidneys are struggling to filter whatever is in his system. We have started supportive treatments and antidotes for the most common poisonings, but identifying the exact cause would help us target our approach." "Will he?" I could not finish the question. "We are doing everything possible," she said, understanding my unspoken fear. "The next 48 hours will be critical." I nodded, unable to form words as I looked at my son's pale face, the breathing tube obscuring his smile, the monitors reducing his life to numbers and waveforms. For 3 days, I did not leave the hospital. I slept in a recliner beside Mason's bed, waking at every change in the rhythm of the monitors. Nurses brought me coffee and sandwiches that I barely touched. Friends from work sent messages that went unanswered. The world outside the ICU ceased to exist. In the quiet hours of night, watching Mason's chest rise and fall with mechanical precision, memories flooded my mind. His 5th birthday party, just 6 months after Lisa died. I had tried so hard to make it special, staying up all night to decorate the house with dinosaur-themed everything, his obsession at the time. When he came downstairs that morning and saw the streamers and balloons, his face lit up with a joy I had feared might be permanently dimmed by grief. "Dad, this is awesome!" he had exclaimed, throwing his arms around my waist. I remembered teaching him to ride his bike without training wheels last summer, running alongside him down our street, both of us laughing as he wobbled but stayed upright. "Do not let go," he had called, even as I already had, watching him pedal independently for the first time. Our bedtime routine flashed through my mind. Mason in pajamas, hair damp from his bath, picking out 3 books for me to read. My terrible voices for different characters that made him giggle. The way he always asked the same question as I tucked him in, "Tell me something about Mom," and I would share a small memory, keeping Lisa alive for him. How she loved thunderstorms and would sit on the porch to watch lightning. How she could not cook to save her life, but made the best chocolate chip cookies from a pre-made dough. How her laugh could fill a room. Then came the memory of Lisa's final days in the hospital after the accident. She had known she was dying. In a rare moment of consciousness, she had gripped my hand with surprising strength. "Promise me you will keep him safe," she had whispered. "Promise me, Diamond." "I promise," I had sworn, believing with all my heart I could protect our son from anything. Now, looking at Mason fighting for his life, that promise echoed in my mind like an accusation. I had failed him. I had failed Lisa. Dr. Chen returned with a toxicologist, Dr. Ramirez, who asked detailed questions about Mason's environment, our home, his school, and activities. "We are seeing liver damage patterns consistent with certain plant toxins," Dr. Ramirez explained. "Has he been anywhere he might have access to unusual plants? Perhaps a garden or greenhouse?" I thought about my mother's extensive indoor garden, filled with exotic plants she ordered from specialty catalogs. She prided herself on her rare specimens, though I had never paid much attention to what she grew. "My mother has a lot of houseplants," I said slowly. "Mason was at her house the weekend before he got sick. Would you happen to know what kinds of plants?" "Not specifically. She has dozens, some flowering ones, some with unusual leaves." Dr. Ramirez nodded thoughtfully. "We will continue testing. In the meantime, try to recall anything unusual Mason might have eaten or drunk recently, particularly at your mother's house." That evening, a nurse noticed Mason's fingers twitching slightly. "This could be a good sign," she said cautiously. "His brain activity is showing some improvement." A fragile hope bloomed in my chest as I held Mason's small hand, careful not to disturb the IV line. "Can you hear me, buddy? Dad is right here. I am not going anywhere." I imagined I felt a slight pressure from his fingers, though it might have been wishful thinking. I talked to him for hours, telling him about the Lego set waiting at home, the camping trip we would take when he was better, the puppy we might adopt that he had been asking for. "Remember what you told me last week?" I said. "That you want to be a veterinarian when you grow up? You said you want to help animals the way doctors help people. The world needs kind-hearted vets like you would be, Mason. You need to get better so you can help all those animals." As I spoke, memories of my mother's strange behavior over recent months took on new, sinister overtones. Her insistence that Mason eat food she prepared. Her comments about how I was not fit to raise him alone. The custody papers I had found in her desk drawer when looking for stamps, which she had laughed off as just a precaution when confronted. "Just in case something happens to you," she had said, "Mason would need a proper guardian." At the time, I had been angry, but believed she was simply being overprotective in her controlling way. Now, a darker possibility formed in my mind, too terrible to fully acknowledge. On the third day of Mason's ICU stay, his condition remained critical but stable. The doctors were cautiously optimistic that his young body was fighting back, though he remained unconscious. I had just finished speaking with Dr. Chen about the latest round of tests when my phone rang. It was my mother. I almost did not answer, but some part of me needed to hear her voice, to search for any indication that my growing suspicions might be wrong. I stepped into the hallway and accepted the call. "Diamond, I have been trying to reach you for days," Patricia said without preamble. Her voice held its usual tone of mild irritation, as if I had deliberately inconvenienced her. "Mason is in the hospital, Mom. He is very sick." My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. There was a brief pause before she responded. "Yes, I gathered that from your message. That is unfortunate. But I am calling about Rachel's birthday tomorrow. We need you to come help with preparations. I am making her favorite dinner, and we need to decorate the house." I could not believe what I was hearing. My son was fighting for his life, and she was concerned about party decorations? I gripped the phone tighter, struggling to maintain my composure. "Mom, did you hear what I said? Mason is in intensive care. He is on a ventilator. I cannot leave him. Surely the hospital staff are taking care of him," she replied dismissively. "There is nothing you can do by sitting there, and family obligations are important. Rachel is expecting you." The casual indifference to Mason's condition ignited something in me. "Nothing I can do? He is my son. He could be dying." "You are being dramatic," Patricia said with an audible sigh. "Children get sick all the time. They bounce back." Now about tomorrow. I need you here by 10. The caterers arrive at 11, and there is much to do before then. I leaned against the wall, suddenly feeling like I could not stand unsupported. I am not coming, Mom. I will not leave Mason. Diamond Evans. You have always been selfish, she snapped, her voice hardening. Always putting your own priorities above the family. First with that woman you married, and now this. Rachel will be devastated if you miss her birthday. That woman was my wife and Mason's mother, I said through clenched teeth. And this is not about priorities. My child is critically ill. You know, she continued, as if I had not spoken, I have always supported you financially. Who helped with the down payment on your house? Who paid for Mason's preschool? And this is how you repay me? By snubbing your sister? The mention of money at such a moment was so inappropriate that I nearly hung up. But something kept me on the line, a need to understand the depths of her callousness. This has nothing to do with money, Mom. Mason needs me here. Well, it should have something to do with money, she retorted. Because if you cannot make time for your family obligations, perhaps I should reconsider my financial commitments to you. The trust fund, the inheritance, all of it. I could not believe what I was hearing. My mother was threatening to cut me off financially if I did not abandon my critically ill child to attend a birthday party. Are you serious right now? You are threatening me while my son is hooked up to life support? I am simply stating facts. Family loyalty goes both ways, Diamond. If you cannot be bothered to support your sister on her special day, why should I continue supporting you? In that moment, something broke inside me. The years of manipulation, the controlling behavior, the criticism, all of it crystallized into perfect clarity. And with it came the horrifying certainty that my mother was capable of exactly what I had begun to suspect. Mason is more important than money, I said quietly. He is more important than anything. If you cannot understand that, then we have nothing more to discuss. If you choose that boy over your blood family, you are no longer welcome in this house, Patricia declared, her voice cold. And you can forget about being in my will. That boy is my son. He is my blood. And I choose him. Every time. There was a moment of stunned silence before Patricia exploded. Then you can get out of this family. You ungrateful, pathetic excuse for a son. Just like your father, weak and disappointing. Goodbye, Mom, I said, and ended the call. My hands were shaking as I blocked her number. I stood in the hallway for several minutes, processing what had just happened. The conversation had confirmed my worst fears about my mother's character, but it had also liberated me from decades of emotional manipulation. When I returned to Mason's room, one of the nurses was adjusting his IV. She looked up and must have seen something in my expression. Are you all right, Mr. Evans? I just cut ties with my mother, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. And I think it may be the best decision I have ever made. The nurse nodded sympathetically and patted my arm before leaving. I sat beside Mason, taking his small hand in mine. It is just you and me now, buddy, I whispered. But that is all we need. We are going to be okay. I did not know then how prophetic my words to the nurse had been, or that cutting ties with my mother might have saved both our lives. That night, alone with my thoughts in Mason's hospital room, I began to piece together troubling patterns in my mother's behavior. Her obsession with having Mason spend time at her house. Her insistence on feeding him foods she prepared herself. The way she would send him home with treats, always instructing him to save these special cookies just for you, not for Daddy. I recalled how she had reacted after Lisa's death, not with sympathy but with an almost predatory interest in Mason. The boy needs a woman's influence, she had insisted repeatedly. He should stay with me more often. At the time, I had attributed her behavior to misguided concern, or her typical controlling nature. Now, I saw it through a darker lens. I remembered finding custody paperwork in her desk, and how she had brushed it off as a precaution. What if it had been something more sinister? What if she had been planning to take Mason from me? I shared my growing concerns with Dr. Chen the next morning. I know this sounds extreme, I said, but I'm starting to think my mother might have deliberately harmed Mason. Instead of dismissing my fears, Dr. Chen listened attentively. What makes you suspect that? I explained about Patricia's possessiveness toward Mason, her houseplants that could potentially be toxic, the strange food she insisted he eat, and finally, the disturbing phone call. These are serious concerns, Dr. Chen said. With your permission, I would like to order some very specific toxicology tests. If your suspicions have merit, identifying the exact toxin could help us treat Mason more effectively. Do whatever you need to do, I agreed immediately. That evening, one of the night nurses noticed increased brain activity on Mason's monitors. He seems to be trying to wake up, she explained, checking his pupils with a small light. This is encouraging. I stayed awake all night, watching for any sign of consciousness, talking to Mason continuously, telling him stories about his mother, about our future plans, anything to give him something to come back to. As dawn broke, casting pale light through the hospital window, Mason's eyelids fluttered. I called for the nurse, who quickly summoned Dr. Chen. We watched as Mason struggled toward consciousness, his eyes finally opening for the first time in days. His gaze was unfocused at first, then slowly settled on my face. The breathing tube prevented him from speaking, but he squeezed my hand weakly. Dr. Chen performed a quick neurological assessment, clearly pleased with his responsiveness. We can try removing the breathing tube if he continues to improve, she said. His latest tests show his oxygen levels are stabilizing. By afternoon, Mason was breathing on his own, though an oxygen mask remained in place. He was weak and disoriented, but definitely improving. When we were alone, he motioned for me to come closer, lifting the mask slightly. "Dad," he whispered, his voice raspy from the tube that had been in his throat. "Dad, Grandma caused it." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean, buddy?" Mason's eyes filled with tears. "The special cookies," she said. "Our secret. Not to tell you." "What special cookies, Mason?" I asked gently, trying to keep the alarm from my voice. "After lunch, she gave me cookies, said they had magic herbs to make me strong. But they tasted funny." He paused, struggling to find words. She said, "If I told you, you would take them away. Our secret." "Did she say anything else?" I asked, my heart pounding. Mason nodded weakly, said soon, "I would live with her. That you were too busy, not a good dad." Tears spilled down his cheeks. "But you are the best dad." I hugged him carefully, mindful of the IV lines and monitors. "You did nothing wrong, Mason. Nothing at all. I am so proud of you for telling me." I immediately called for Dr. Chen and relayed what Mason had told me. Her expression grew grave as she listened. "I will inform the toxicologist," she said. "This changes our approach significantly." Within an hour, Dr. Ramirez arrived with the latest test results. "We found something," he said, his expression grim. "Traces of a compound found in certain ornamental plants, particularly a variety of foxglove. It contains cardiac glycosides that can cause the symptoms Mason experienced. In higher doses, it can be fatal." "Foxglove," I repeated, remembering the purple flowers in my mother's sunroom. She had proudly shown them to me once, explaining how she had special permission to grow them despite their toxicity because of their medicinal properties in controlled amounts. In addition, Dr. Ramirez continued, "We found traces of other plant toxins in smaller amounts, suggesting multiple exposures over time rather than a single large dose." The implication was clear. My mother had been slowly poisoning Mason, likely planning to escalate to a point where he would need extended hospitalization, during which she might petition for custody on grounds of my negligence or inability to care for him properly. I contacted the police that afternoon. Detective Sarah Morris took my statement, recording every detail about my mother's behavior, Mason's testimony, and the medical findings. "We will need to search your mother's home," she explained. "I will request an emergency warrant based on the medical evidence and your son's statement." While Mason rested, I provided Detective Morris with every detail I could remember about my mother's plants, her kitchen layout, and where she might store special ingredients. I also told her about the custody documents I had seen. The police executed the search warrant that evening. Detective Morris called me from my mother's house, her voice tense with controlled anger. We found several highly toxic plants, including foxglove, lily of the valley, and castor bean plants. In her kitchen, we discovered a separate set of cookware that tested positive for plant toxins, along with homemade cookies stored in a container labeled Mason's Special Treats that contain significant amounts of ground plant material. She paused before continuing. We also found a journal. I think you should know what was in it. The detective read excerpts from my mother's journal, documenting her plan in chilling detail. Patricia had been systematically poisoning Mason with increasing doses, intending to make him ill enough to require long-term medical care. She planned to use this as evidence that I was an unfit father, allowing her to petition for emergency custody. Your son was very lucky, Detective Morris concluded. The doctors caught it in time, and your decision to keep him away from your mother likely saved his life. We are arresting her now on charges of attempted murder and child endangerment. I sat in stunned silence after the call ended, trying to process the magnitude of my mother's betrayal. When Mason woke briefly, I managed to smile for him, promising that he was safe now, that Grandma could never hurt him again. Later that night, I received another call from Detective Morris. We arrested your mother at her home. She was in the middle of preparing for a birthday party. When we informed her of the charges, she showed no remorse. In fact, she insisted she was only doing what was best for Mason. Thank you for letting me know, I said, my voice hollow. There is one more thing, the detective added. Your sister was present during the arrest. She became hysterical, claiming you had fabricated everything out of jealousy. You should be prepared for potential hostility from her. I understand, I replied, though in truth, Rachel's reaction was the least of my concerns at that moment. As I watched Mason sleeping peacefully for the first time in days, I wondered how anyone could harm this innocent child. But I also knew that the danger had passed. Whatever happened next, Mason was safe, and that was all that mattered. Mason's recovery was slow, but steady. After a week in the hospital, Dr. Chen delivered the news we had been waiting for. His liver and kidney function have improved significantly, she explained. He was extremely fortunate. Had the poisoning continued, or had you brought him in any later, the damage might have been irreversible. When can we go home? I asked, watching Mason coloring in a book a nurse had brought him. I think we can discharge him in a couple of days, provided his blood work continues to improve. She hesitated before adding, he will need follow-up care, of course. And I would recommend psychological support for both of you. I nodded, already aware that the road ahead would be challenging in ways beyond the physical. Mason had been betrayed by someone he should have been able to trust implicitly. That kind of trauma leaves scars that medicine cannot heal. As Mason grew stronger physically, I had to confront the devastating truth. My own mother had systematically poisoned my child in an attempt to take him from me. The reality was almost too horrific to comprehend, yet I had no choice but to face it. Detective Morris kept me updated on the investigation. The police had uncovered extensive evidence at Patricia's home, including detailed journals documenting her plan. She wrote about introducing small amounts of toxins into his food over several months, Detective Morris explained during one of our calls. The goal was to make him chronically ill without raising suspicion. The final larger dose was meant to trigger a medical emergency that would require extended hospitalization. And then, she would petition for custody. I finished, the pieces fitting together with sickening clarity. Exactly. We found completed custody paperwork ready to file, along with a list of doctors she planned to consult who would testify that your work schedule made you an unsuitable caregiver for a chronically ill child. The calculated nature of the plan sent chills through me. This was not a momentary lapse in judgment or an impulsive act. This was premeditated, planned over months or possibly years. Rachel called me the day after Patricia's arrest, her voice shaking with anger and disbelief. How could you do this? She demanded. How could you accuse Mom of something so horrible? She loves Mason. Rachel, the evidence is overwhelming, I replied calmly. The police found the poisonous plants, the contaminated food, and her journals detailing exactly what she did and why. Those could be about anything. You are twisting things because you have always been jealous of how she favors me. This is not about you or me. This is about Mason. He nearly died, Rachel. The doctors found specific plant toxins in his system that match exactly what was growing in Mom's sunroom. I do not believe you, she insisted. Mom would never hurt anyone, especially not Mason. I sighed, recognizing the denial for what it was. I am sending you copies of the medical reports and police findings. Read them, Rachel. For Mason's sake, please try to understand the truth. She hung up without responding. 3 days later, after presumably reviewing the evidence, she called back. Her voice was subdued, shocked. I read everything, she said quietly. I went to see Mom too. She did not deny it. She said she was doing what was necessary to save Mason from your incompetence. Rachel's voice broke. How could I not have seen this side of her? She hid it well, I replied, feeling an unexpected surge of compassion for my sister. She manipulated all of us for years. I am so sorry, Diamond. I should have believed you immediately. Is he going to be okay? He is recovering. It will take time, but he is strong. After Mason was discharged, we returned to an empty house that no longer felt entirely safe. He had nightmares, crying out in his sleep. He became anxious about food, refusing to eat anything he had not seen me prepare from start to finish. He developed separation anxiety, panicking if I was out of his sight for too long. A child psychologist, Dr. Tamara Wilson, began working with Mason twice weekly. Trust has been fundamentally broken for him, she explained after their first session. It will take time to rebuild his sense of safety in the world. As the case against my mother proceeded, I was called in for multiple interviews with the district attorney. The evidence was overwhelming, but Patricia maintained her innocence publicly, claiming I had fabricated the allegations to cut her out of Mason's life. The preliminary hearing was one of the hardest days of my life. Sitting in the courtroom, watching my mother enter in handcuffs, I felt a complex mixture of grief, rage, and relief. Patricia looked diminished somehow, smaller than I remembered, though her expression remained defiant. When it was my turn to testify, I recounted the events leading to Mason's hospitalization, the suspicious patterns I had observed, and finally, the damning phone call where she had prioritized a birthday party over her grandson's life. And at any point during this conversation about your critically ill son, the prosecutor asked, did the defendant express concern for his condition? No, I replied. She dismissed it as me being dramatic and threatened to cut me off financially if I did not leave him to attend my sister's birthday party. Patricia glared at me throughout my testimony, her eyes cold with contempt. When she was called to the stand, she painted herself as a concerned grandmother. Diamond has always been unstable, she claimed. After his wife died, he became paranoid, possessive of Mason. I only wanted to help the boy. Those plants were for my arthritis. The cookies were just treats for my grandson. But her explanation could not account for the journal entries, the toxic residue found on her separate set of cookware, or Mason's blood tests. The judge ruled that the case would proceed to trial, denying bail due to the serious nature of the charges and the risk to Mason. As we left the courthouse, I came face to face with Patricia in the hallway. Guards flanked her, but she stopped when she saw me. You were never worthy of him, she hissed. Never worthy of being a father. I would have raised him properly. I looked at the woman who had given birth to me, searching for any hint of the mother I had once desperately wanted her to be. Instead, I saw only bitterness and entitlement. I forgive you, I said quietly, the words surprising even me. Not for your sake, but for mine and Mason's. And we will not carry your hatred with us. Her face contorted with rage. I do not want your forgiveness. You are nothing to me now. You are right about one thing, I replied. You and I are done. But Mason will grow up loved, supported, and free from your poison, both literal and figurative. As the guards led her away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I had finally broken free from the toxic cycle of seeking approval from someone incapable of giving it. 6 months after Patricia's arrest, justice was served in a wood-paneled courtroom. After a 2-week trial where medical experts, detectives, and even Mason's recorded testimony were presented, The jury took less than 4 hours to reach a verdict, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Patricia to 15 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 10 years, citing the calculated nature of her crimes against a vulnerable child. As we left the courthouse for the final time, Mason squeezed my hand. "Is it really over, Dad?" "Yes, buddy. It is really over. Grandma cannot hurt you or anyone else now." In the aftermath of the trial, Mason and I moved to Portland, 3 hours away from Seattle and the painful memories there. We found a cozy house with a large backyard where Mason could play safely. I transferred to my company's Portland office, arranging a flexible schedule that allowed me to be home when Mason returned from his new school. The physical effects of the poisoning gradually faded. Mason's final liver function tests came back normal, and his pediatrician marveled at his resilience. "Kids are amazing healers," she told us during a checkup. "Physically, there should be no lasting damage." The emotional healing took longer. Mason continued therapy, gradually working through his fears and trust issues. There were still nightmares, still moments of panic when I was out of sight too long, but they became less frequent. Small victories accumulated. The first time he ate at a friend's house without anxiety, the first night without bad dreams, the first time he felt comfortable with a babysitter while I attended a work function. Rachel transformed in ways I never expected. After cutting contact with Patricia, she sought therapy to understand the dynamics of our dysfunctional family. She moved to Portland 3 months after us, finding an apartment just 10 minutes away. "I want to be part of your lives," she explained over coffee one afternoon. "I want to be the Aunt Mason deserves, not the person Mom tried to shape me into." Rachel became a regular presence in our home, building a genuine relationship with Mason based on mutual interests rather than obligation. She taught him to bake, celebrated his achievements at school, and never once tried to take my place or undermine my parenting. "I keep thinking about all the years I believed I was the favored one," she confided one evening after Mason had gone to bed. "But now I see that Mom did not really love either of us. She just used me as a weapon against you. That is not love." I nodded, understanding her journey toward this realization. Love does not control or possess. It supports and liberates. That became my mantra as I rebuilt my life and helped Mason rebuild his. I joined a support group for parents whose children had experienced trauma, finding strength in sharing our stories and strategies. Some evenings, the weight of everything that had happened threatened to crush me. On those nights, I would sit in Mason's room after he fell asleep, watching his peaceful breathing, reminding myself that we had survived the worst. Mason returned to his interests with renewed enthusiasm. He joined a science club at his new school, made friends who knew nothing of our past, and even asked again about getting a dog. "I think it is time," I told him on his 8th birthday, presenting him with a certificate for the local animal shelter. "We can go this weekend and find the right one." The joy on his face in that moment was like sunlight breaking through clouds, pure and healing. We adopted a 3-year-old golden retriever mix named Cooper, who became Mason's constant companion. The responsibility of caring for Cooper gave Mason a sense of purpose and control that had been stolen from him. I often found them curled up together, Mason reading aloud from his books while Cooper listened with canine patience. As the seasons changed, so did we. The acute pain of betrayal gradually transformed into a deeper understanding of human complexity. I learned that family is defined not by blood, but by love and respect. Mason learned that while trust might be broken, it can also be rebuilt, stronger than before. One evening, as we sat on our back porch watching Cooper chase fireflies, Mason asked a question that caught me off guard. "Dad, do you think Grandma ever loved us?" I considered my answer carefully. I think she believed she did, in her own way. But real love does not hurt the people you care about. Real love protects, nurtures, and respects. Mason nodded thoughtfully. "Like you and me." "Yes, buddy, exactly like you and me." I realized then that through this terrible ordeal, Mason had gained wisdom beyond his years. He understood that love was not about possession or control, but about freedom and safety. As for me, I learned that protecting those we love sometimes requires difficult choices and firm boundaries. I learned that forgiveness does not mean reconciliation or forgetting, but releasing the power that hatred holds over our lives. I learned that family can be chosen, built, and nurtured in healthier ways than what I had known growing up. Watching Mason play with his dog in our new backyard, safe and gradually healing, I understood that though some wounds may never completely disappear, we had found our way to a life filled with genuine love and trust. We had broken the cycle of toxicity that had poisoned my family for generations, and in doing so, we had found freedom neither of us had known before. The journey from victim to survivor is rarely linear. There are setbacks, moments of doubt, and lingering pain. But there is also joy, connection, and the profound satisfaction of reclaiming your story. Mason and I were writing a new chapter together, one defined not by what had been done to us, but by what we chose to create for ourselves. As I look at my son today, I see not just a survivor, but a thriving, compassionate boy with his whole life ahead of him. And that, perhaps, is the most profound lesson of all, that even after the deepest betrayal, healing is possible. Not perfect healing that erases all scars, but the kind that incorporates our wounds into a larger, richer understanding of what it means to be human, to be vulnerable, and ultimately, to be free. Have you ever had to set boundaries with toxic family members to protect yourself or someone you love? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share to help others who might be struggling with similar situations. Remember that choosing your own well-being is not selfish, it is necessary. Thank you for listening to our story, and may you find the strength to protect what matters most in your own life.